Fishback. Welcome back to the Rocky Mountain Writer Podcast.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited for this.
Yeah, great. Well, we're right on the cusp of big launch day coming right up, and on the heels of lots of awards. I assume you've got to start an award shelf somewhere in that house because you got some nice awards coming your way for the last book, Blood of Seven.
I was a finalist. I did not get an award for it, but I was a finalist. So I got the groovy sticker for the cover, and I've mailed some of those out to my friends who bought copies of it before it became a finalist. But yeah, I mean, I will clear off a shelf eventually because I'm sure I'll get lots of awards in the
future. And just a few days away, depending on when this podcast gets posted, but hopefully it's soon. But the launch of the sequel to Blood of Seven, or at least it's in the series, right? Gorging.
The Gorging of Souls.
The Gorging of Souls.
All I have is this proof copy, which you'll see is marked up a lot on the edge here. But it has the silly proof thing from Amazon. But yeah, that's the cover basically. It's coming out on August 19th. It's been a long time in the making. I was working on it, I think at the end of 2019, and then the beginning of 2020, I bunked my head and got my fourth concussion. Yay! And yeah, so I put that on hold because once I was able to look at screens again, I had lost all interest in the story. So I instead worked on writing a bunch of short stories and compiled those into what is now known as The Doll Room, which came out last year. And part of me is like super proud of that book, and part of me feels bad because I know a lot of creatives struggled last year during the pandemic. And here I am just like plugging away, writing short story after short story and then putting them all together. But I just really wanted to get a book out too last year. So there we have it. The Doll Room came out and people enjoy it. And I had a lot of fun writing it. And, for recovering from a concussion, it was kind of like one of the only things I could really like control, I guess you could say. And it made me feel normal to do that kind of thing. So like, yeah, cooking and writing were the two things I did a lot of during my recovery because those were they made me feel normal. And now my brain is all fixed. And last year, I started writing The Gorging of Souls, which had been called The Blood of Seven Part 2 until probably like a month ago. And then I finally got a title. But I started writing it for NaNoWriMo in 2020. And my goal was to finish it on December 31st. And I stayed up probably until 2 a.m. on New Year's Day writing it. And then I finally finished it on actually the January 1st, 2021.
Wow.
So
wow.
I think it ended up being 105,000 words, that first draft. Whew. So yeah, my fingers were on fire.
Well, nobody can, everybody, I guess everybody found a way to get through the pandemic, and some people started to cook for the first time. Some people had to put down all their writing and creative work. They just couldn't do it. They found they were completely out of their rhythm, but whatever it was that was going to get us through, you kind of found yourself pursuing those interests and, disciplines, right? I mean, yeah. So congratulations on being productive. And I would say I've talked to other writers I've talked to, even on the podcast or just others, my friends, it's probably 50-50. Some people just shut down and others were in their complete rhythm of production. So, yeah. Well, let's start with Gorging of Souls and take us into this world. But maybe you want to start with Blood of Seven and pick up a little bit from there. It's up to you, but tell us what kind of world we're entering if we pick this up next week.
Sure, yeah. I did write The Gorging of Souls in such a way that if someone happened upon that one before The Blood of Seven, they'll probably get the gist of what happened in The Blood of Seven, but I do recommend beginning with that book if you haven't read it yet. And that one takes us on the adventure, the supernatural suspense adventure of Anne Logan, and she's a detective that's suffering from survivor's guilt, and she doesn't know what to do about it. So she returns to her small hometown, discovers that her dad is like missing, And as a result, she ends up getting thrust into this case that involves a delusional mother and the Bible's secret texts, and an ancient deity hell-bent on destroying humanity. So it's, save the world from a small Colorado town. And then the Gorging of Souls picks up where the Blood of Seven left off. We're back with Teresa, who was the delusional mother in the Blood of Seven. We have Anne struggling to, well, I don't want to talk too much because there might be spoilers.
Of course. Of course.
Let's just say Anne has a whole new set of challenges she has to kind of overcome, or like work her way to accept, while once again saving humanity and certain special people that she needs to protect.
Okay. Where are we, in a fictional town, or did you use a real town?
It's a fictional town. I do mention Salida in both books because I love Salida, and that's actually where this particular version of this book got kicked off, was in a little town, a little house that we rent when we go there for long weekends. I wrote this the prologue there. The prologue didn't make it in because it's too spoilery for the rest of the book, but it is offered as bonus material in the back of the book. So when everyone gets it, be sure to look for that special bonus content. I also have some alternate cover art because I did paint the cover for this one too. So yeah, I don't know if that answered the question.
You said the word two. I did not know you did the cover for the first one.
I did. I painted the cover. It's actually the canvas is hanging above my desk, so I can look at it all the time.
Oh my gosh.
The Gorging of Souls cover I did digitally. I got in.
Hold it up again. We need to see it.
Yes, sure.
For those on the video version. Wow.
Yeah. So during the pandemic, I got back into art, and I wanted to explore digital art, and so I bought an iPad Pro and an Apple Pencil, and I went to town, and I created a lot of different styles of artwork, and decided to do the artwork for the cover of this one. And I explored the different there's so many different like brushes and textures and things you can use in digital art, and it was really fun to come up with some designs for that. So yeah, bonus material also includes, I think, two alternate cover designs and some concepts that I like, thumbnail concepts too. So
that's great. No, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
So are we looking at this? Is how dark do you get? I guess that's I'm trying to help the readers understand if this is something for them.
Right. So they're categorized as supernatural suspense. There is some horror in there. I would say they're pretty dark. Some people say they're scary, but I've also had people who are major weenies read them, and they said, I know, they told me that they were able to focus on the writing, which was a huge compliment. Like, your writing is so good that I was able to get past all the scary parts. And I was like, oh, thank you. I love you. So, I mean, you can always skip the parts that are scary if you don't want to read them, but there is some spooky stuff in this one. I think the Blood of Seven might be a little scarier, but the Gorging of Souls does have children who don't make it in it. So I'll just put that little warning out there. So if you're sensitive to that kind of thing, then maybe skip that part or skip the book. I mean, I know I'm not for everybody, so.
Nobody is for everybody. If everybody,
right, exactly.
It'd be a whole different world. And the word gorging, I think the word gorging in the title does kind of hint at maybe some darkness.
Oh yes, definitely. There's definite darkness.
Yeah. Tell us about the series, the name of the series.
The name of the series is the Origin Codex, and that comes from, well, I made it up, but a lot of the Bible's secret text, so the Nag Hammadi library, a lot of what I pull from comes from scraps of the scriptures in those secret texts, and they're basically like scriptures that were found in 1945 in Nag Hammadi, Egypt, that just didn't make it into the Bible because they are completely alternate versions of what we know and love about the Bible. So, when the Blood of Seven is loosely based on the origin of the world, which is the main story that now, after doing more research, it kind of there's various retellings of this one story all throughout the scriptures. So the Gorging of Souls, I kind of tweaked with it a little bit. I pulled it one scripture and then I made up some other ones. I called it the Origin Codex because there's a book in the book, in both books, that is a sentient book that kind of shows Anne different passages that she might need to help figure out on in the supernatural aspect of the cases that she's working. So the main one was that on the origin of the world. So origin codex. So that's how I came up with that.
Does Anne go into this whole story even with the Blood of Seven? Has she got a religious orientation heading into this?
No. So she is in the Blood of Seven. She is facts and hard evidence. She's like driven by that sort of thing. Science, no woo-woo stuff, no ghost spirits, nothing like that. And of course, by the end, she gets that a little bit challenged. And then in the second book, you can kind of see more. She still holds on to some of that stuff, but eventually she lets go of it. And she's like, okay, this supernatural stuff, it's happening again. So I guess I better just accept that it's happening. And it's interesting because there is a scene in The Gorging of Souls where she's with her deputy and trying to explain away something supernatural with, well, it could be drugs or, something else that's going on with this person. And she's like, I would have thought that here too, but not anymore. And so, but she doesn't say that to him because she, he's kind of deputy in her life and she doesn't really know how he feels about that kind of thing, and she doesn't want to be like, well, it's actually this, and he's like, you're nuts, so she just kind of keeps those thoughts to herself, and through the book I kind of tried to play with having her have this interior version of herself where she does internally think these things, but then externally she says something else to kind of not make herself sound crazy, and eventually in the book it all comes out and it's this big kind of reveal, okay, here's what it is. and it all comes together. So
how much of her journey regarding skepticism with all this parallels with yours?
Oh gosh, I'm a heathen. I've never been baptized. I have gone to various different churches because I have friends who are of all different faiths. And I believe in a higher power. I don't call it really anything except the universe. So her journey is very different from mine, I would say, because I've always believed in an other world and an other whatever you want to call it. And she hasn't, but I've met people from different sides of the fence, railroad tracks. I don't know, yeah. Who I've heard their opinions and how they view religion or don't view it or however. And so I kind of brought some of that into it.
Yeah. What are the connections, if there are any, and maybe there aren't, between the short story collection and the two books? Are they, where does the short story collection fit thematically?
It doesn't. Both of my short story collections are complete standalones. Okay. There are a few Easter eggs in the doll room. So if you read Lump, I don't have a copy of that nearby, but Lump is my first short story collection that came out in 2019. And then in the doll room, I have some Easter eggs. Actually, Amy Dreyer, she beta read the doll room for me and she picked up on all of them. And I was just like, yeah. Awesome. So it's kind of fun to throw that sort of thing in there for the people who have read or have read one. But yeah, they're all, I would say 80% of the short stories are horror, and there's a few that are kind of contemporary fantasy and there that are just, I mean, almost literary. There's some that could be read as or thought of as prose poetry even. So they're all over the place,
Yeah.
but yeah, mostly horror.
Are they short stories in the doll room or lump? Do you send those out and seek publication for short stories elsewhere, or do you just saving them up for your own collections?
I used to send them out, but now I just save them up for my own collections.
Yeah.
But the story that I had published in the Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers Anthology Found, that one, since I got the rights back, I put that in lump. And I had another one, The Replacements, that was previously published in another anthology. Those are
Nice.
both in lump.
Nice. Do you find it's just takes a long time to send them out, wait? Most short story publications are a pretty long process.
Yeah. And it used to be this service called, or not really a service, but a website called Dark Markets. And they would send out a newsletter every week or month or something. And it had all kinds of different, like, hey, here's open submissions. Here, this one has a theme. This one, just send whatever you've got, that sort of thing. But I think they recently, they needed funding and they didn't get
Yeah, gotcha.
needed, so they stopped. But yeah, I went to look. I was like, well, maybe I should submit some short stories and just, get my name out there a little more. And yeah, they were like, oh, we're closed now. We're not doing this anymore. And I was like, oh, I guess I'll just save them for myself.
So what did you learn between The Blood of Seven and The Gorging of Souls writing wise? Did you see a improvement in your own thinking, your own process? Did anything change with your process? Was it different writing a book too when you already had your world kind of built? Was that a whole different experience?
Those are a lot of questions, Mark.
Yeah.
Let me just start with this one. When I wrote The Blood of Seven, I was going to have a sequel. It was going to be a standalone novel, but I have a really hard time with tidy little bow on the end of my stories. Even a lot of my short stories leave it just enough can kind of like, ooh, I wonder what happened. It could have been this or this, and they can kind of like be part, like take part in completing the end of the story because I think this happened, then if they have friends who read it, they can like argue about it or something. I don't know. So when I ended The Blood of Seven and then got it out, a lot of people were like, when's the sequel coming out? And I was like, well, I should probably write a sequel. And deep down, I knew I was eventually going to do that. I just wasn't sure if there was enough there that people would want to know what happens next. And apparently they did. So The Blood of Seven took me 11 years off and on to get to the draft that it is today, back in 2019 when I published it. I have all of the previous version. I'm glad that I waited because it is better today than it ever was back then.
Right.
The original first draft, the main character was not Anne. It was a woman named Cora. And I chose Anne because I was so on who Cora was that I was like, I need a new name for this character. They're not Cora anymore. And she was unmotivated. She just like decided to go do this thing, and there was no reason for it really. I've learned so much. Let me just say, attending Colorado Gold and Pikes Peak Writers and just having the community that we have at our conferences, and even just meet the writers and building friendships and relationships with them outside of the conferences has taught me so much about like writing. And also I have learned, okay, every single thing I learn writing, I do not have to employ. Like I need to find I have a non-process process is what I call it. I'm a pantser. Every time I try to outline, it goes so badly that I'm not even finishing the project. So I'm a pantser, hardcore pantser through and through, die hard. I try to outline again well, that's probably not true. I will probably try to outline again and then be reminded of why I'm a pantser. So
Just to stay on
with the gorge,
stay on the bright side of the road. It's okay. You're on the bright side, the right.
yeah,
Just don't even look over.
I hung up a sign over on the wall over there that says, "Be a pantser. Plotting is unnatural." There's that.
Why would you ever?
So yeah.
Good.
When I wrote The Gorging of Souls, I got going in. I was like, I need to just sit down and write this. And I ended up in 2019 into 2020. I ended up with 80,000 words of only at 80,000 words and going nowhere. And I took a step back and I some articles on how to write a sequel. I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. This should be easier. The world is already built. The characters are already developed.
Yeah.
And so biggest piece of advice I found that helped me was reread the first book and write down any open questions and any little snippets and anything. And I'm creating like a story Bible kind of. So I have like character descriptions and town descriptions and things in there. And I had this huge list, 200 and something questions that I could explore in the second book. So that was where I started. And once I got that prologue, I was like, okay, I know the direction of this book, and just sat down and I read it. And the only plotting I did was at the very end. I know, don't shake your head, don't shame me. I did a tiny bit, but even then I still kind of went all over the place. It was just to get to the end because I think I had like 3 days left in December, and I really wanted to finish it on December 1st so I could go into the new year of 2021 with like just rest, and I could also rest and all that. So I did kind of write down some high level plot points of like, okay, these are the things that need to happen to get to the end. And even then I still changed it. So yeah, it did help me get focused and get to the end.
So those 80,000 words the first time out, that all got trashed?
I mean, probably take it and write a whole other book with it because none of it really has to do with the current series. So I could tweak it a little bit and make it its own thing.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of all the things you've learned, you also, in addition to all the things you've already mentioned, you've got a craft related book coming out later this fall, correct?
I hope so. I'm trying to get it out before Colorado Gold. So hopefully like early October, I'll have it out. It's a productivity book called You Can Too Can. It's basically a really simple method that I use to either get motivated or to tell myself like you only have to do it for this long and then you can go do something else. The book itself is aimed towards writers, but you can really use this technique for anything. Anything, especially like stuff you kind of don't want to do. It's like, well, I'll just do it for this amount of time and then move on. And because usually once you get going, if you're cruising along, you're not just going to stop, unless you don't have time. So it's kind of like, I have a couple of different subtitles in mind. One of them is how to do more with less time. One of them is how to write a novel in 20 minutes a day. One of them, I think those are the only two that I really have. But yeah, it's basically like sitting down for 20 minutes and just do the thing for 20 minutes, and that's it. Super simple. I mean, that's the gist of it. But I also have in the book a whole section kind of on mindset and like meditation and affirmations and that. So kind of like, I call it the woo-woo section because not everybody's into that, but it's helped me with a lot of different aspects of my life. Meditation has. So I thought it would be good to put a section in there. I have a section on practical application and like different ways to use the technique, creating habits. It's still a work in progress. I only have, I'm like 11,000 words into it. And I think it's going to be only about 15. So it's a short, like pocket size, like, read it in a sitting and go do it,
And hopefully
little book. So
hopefully you're only spending 20 minutes a day on it.
yes, I am actually using a technique to write the book, which is so meta, right? And that's like the first line in the introduction. I used the method. I'm going to teach you to write this book. And then I'll have I have a data section in there because I've done this. I've used this technique for 2 months. 1 month, I used it just to start my writing session. And sometimes I would go longer and sometimes I would just stick to the time limit. And then I did a month where I only wrote for 20 minutes a day. And I have all that data. And then I'll have the data from the You Can, Too Can book as well to present in the book. So people can see like, okay, it actually works for writing. What else can it work for?
Right.
And I have a friend who uses it in her day job to get through, the tasks we don't want to do. I actually use it in my day job too sometimes. And I'll use it as like a challenge, like what can I get done in 20 minutes? And then I'll just like work my butt off for 20 minutes and whew, okay, I got a lot done. Look at me. I did an hour's worth of work in 20 minutes. What? Time for lunch.
It is true though. A lot of people say, well, I write for an hour every day, and you might write for an hour, but if you're actually, writing for 20 minutes and not just sitting there thinking, if you're ready to write, if you're ready to go, I don't write more than an hour a day, and it's amazing. I mean, sure, half of that is probably thinking or changing words or scratching out paragraphs, but you are putting in productive time. But it does add up. Half an hour a day, 20 minutes a day, it adds up.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. It does. Yeah. Now, I usually write for an hour a day, and probably most of that is spent watching the squirrels outside my window, but squirrel. But yeah, it is true. It's amazing. And when I started like keeping track of how many words I was writing in that time frame, I was like, whoa. And I mean, I type pretty fast. I'm like a 90 word per minute typist, but I think people will be surprised once they employ this. And I'll have some tracking spreadsheets that they can go and download at the end of the book as well. And then I'm considering like how can I make even better ones? Like I have a super simple one where you just write down like your word count and how much time you wrote for. And but I have some more complicated ones that have like graphs and charts, and it has like almost like a NaNoWriMo feel to it it has like here's where you should be if you're trying to go by word count. I want to write 15,000 words this month. It'll have like the progress of where you should be and then where you actually are, which is kind of neat to see that too.
That's great. So, yeah. That's great. So Gorging of Souls comes out August 19th. And, we're still coming out of a pandemic, but we're seeing lots more events and things going on. Mm-hmm. Are you planning any marketing stops, any online events? What's your marketing push look like?
I think I'm going to do a Facebook Live on the 19th. I'm not going to schedule anything. I'm just going to go live and be like, hey, celebrate with me, that kind of thing. Maybe I'll read from the book. And then on September 21st, Jessica Hopkins and I are doing a joint event because she has a book coming out too this month. And it's going to be at the Filling Station, which is a tap house in Inglewood. L.S. Hawker and her husband run that. Yeah. So we're going to have a little event over there. We haven't worked out all the details yet. We're meeting next week to do that, but we'll definitely put something out there to invite people down to come hear us read or, mingle with other writers and have some beer or wine or cocktails or whatever. So
that's great. And what I say the name of your co-presenter that day?
Jessica Hopkins.
Okay, great. And do you have the title of her new entry?
Yes, it's Born to Be Magic.
That's great.
And it is so good. I beta read for her twice for this book, and it's really good.
That's great.
It's a urban fantasy. Takes place in Colorado. Really cool.
That's awesome. Very good. Wow. Well, and obviously the conference coming up, we all hope that is a regathering, a renewal of the organization. It'll be great to get back together. And even as troublesome as some of these COVID-related numbers are, it seems like we're not heading back to where we were a year ago. At least let's hope not.
Yeah, I hope not, because So I took 2019 off from going to conferences because they're expensive. But in 2020 I was like, oh, I'm going back on the conference scene this year. Pikes Peak, Colorado Gold, here I come. And then so this year I'm like, okay, I have to go. I have to go to Colorado Gold, and I bought my ticket and I already have my hotel room. So I'm like, please let us have it.
Gotta be. It's gotta be.
Yeah, it has to.
No, and I'm sure you'll be selling your books there. That'll be great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Claire, this has been a great rundown. Congratulations on the Gorging of Souls. Fantastic. As we wrap up, we always like to just kind of pay it forward a little bit. You've already mentioned some other writers, but now's your chance to sort of mention other books. Something you've read recently. Could be a big star. Could be somebody who's unknown.
Yeah, I have a friend named Jessa Forrest who wrote the short story collection Pulling Teeth, like a prerequisite reading to her novel that's coming out, I think, in October. It's really good. She has like a whole different take on werewolves and a whole world that she's created that's just brilliant. She's a really good writer. Her prose style is just, I can't, I'm like, I wish I could write like that. She's that. So Jessa Forrest, Pulling Teeth is the name of her short stories. Yeah, it's a great book.
Fantastic. Well, Claire, good luck next Thursday with the launch, and see you at Colorado Gold. And thanks for jumping on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.